my approach to teaching them about business is both through the exposure of having them around and having them part of things. We ask them to help us make decisions. We give them like different scenarios and get them to kind of play with that. But I've taught all of our kids design thinking, so they all know how to go through a design thinking process, because I think that's one of the most phenomenal tools that we can give our children, is how to solve an epic problem.
Welcome to the Seen and Heard podcast, helping you enhance your connection, evolve your mindset, and emerge confidently as your true self, living a life feeling aligned, activated, and energized. I'm your host, prowess, international photographer, motivational speaker, and alignment strategist. Looks like a beautiful evening in Melbourne with your view. It's so nice.
So nice. I've got bad lighting though, hey?
Yeah, because you kind of want that natural light coming in on your face, feeling the shadows.
Is that okay or no?
What you could do is get a whiteboard in front of you so it bounces back in.
I wish I had that. See, you're perfect with lighting. I don't have a whiteboard.
It's
No
all
whiteboard.
It's all good.
This is where a podcast also has a video and you're like, oh, whoops.
I should have given you the heads up today. So first up, let's just do a little bit of an intro, because you have had an evolution the last year or two as well.
Yeah,
do you mind sharing your story? Because this the podcast is really about being seen and heard and what it takes someone to find their true calling, like remember what they came here to do and tap into their values and what brings them joy in life and what it took or what it takes to actually get to that place. Like, I know you're in a great place now doing incredible things with your business. So I'd love to know and share a little bit more about that.
I love it. Well, it's funny because I feel like I've pushed myself to stay pretty connected to my values and what I kind of love doing my entire career, but that's led me into entirely different places. And so my career is like a wiggly path, and so is my life, because I do follow the nudges and like listen to the changes that kind of are calling me at any given time, and then I kind of lean into whatever that evolution is. So whether that's going into corporate or then coming out and owning my own business and then going in again and coming out, or being married and then getting divorced and then meeting someone and getting married again. Like, I just follow like where my heart is calling me, but also where my values are leading me. And then I get these amazing opportunities to do some of the coolest stuff on the planet.
Oh, the coolest stuff ever.
Yeah.
Can I ask what your values are that are your guiding force, your compass?
Yeah, I care deeply about people and inclusion, and I've got a really, really strong sense of social justice. Like, I've always really cared about making sure that like the little people have a voice, and that like we're thinking about including and giving opportunities to people who don't always get them. So whether that's through my first career in recruitment or my second career in creating, Australia's biggest innovation festival, Wired for Wonder, or women's retreats to create space for women who needed it at the time, or events and experiences that celebrate really unique souls and we hold space for the diversity that kind of comes with the experiences that we create. I really value inclusion, I really value diversity, I really value experience, I value in-person interactions, and I really value giving people an opportunity to like explore and then actually create their dreams. And weirdly, whether it was recruitment or event design or chief design officer or whatever kind of roles I've taken, I get to play within those like spheres, really, which is quite cool.
That is so good. And just to know that it doesn't really matter what job you're doing, as long as those values are in place and it's aligned with that, and how it can be applied to many different roles and in corporate, in business, and all of that as well. So tell me a bit about what you're actually doing now. What's the big picture?
Yeah, so where do I kind of start? At a global level, I am designing events and experiences that are super transformational, working with insider expeditions with my amazing husband, Steve. So we originally started as a partnership between Wonder and Wander, which is our kind of innovation and growth agency, and insider expeditions to produce one event. And then before we knew it, we started producing other events. And then we stepped into the business as the CEO, COO, and we're kind of on a growth partnership experience with them right now, which is just so cool. You know, you came on one of our amazing experiences down to Antarctica with Diplo and Flume and Oliver Tree and Secular Sabbath and 150 odd wild, amazing souls who said yes to adventure and came on that experience with us. We just got back from taking another 320 people to Antarctica. We've got incredible events and experiences designed. And I think what I love about it is, you know, we were over this side of the world creating transformational retreats and experiences. Carl was on the other side of the world with Insider Expeditions doing the same. And we've sort of seen each other and gone, well, what does it look like if we come together? And it does feel better together. So we get this amazing opportunity to go to the most beautiful places on the planet with the most extraordinary people you could imagine. But we create not only transformation, we give back. Like we create awareness, or we're thinking about consciousness, and we're thinking about the influence that we have and how we can use that for good. So I absolutely love that. I've also got the She Evolves community. So I still am the CEO and founder of the She Evolves community. And that's, you know, a women exclusive experience, which is just really important to me because there's still a massive gap when it comes to equality for women. And it plays out in really funny or silly ways. But, you know, it can be as simple as when you go into an actual bank or an insurance company, or, you know, even Qantas I'm dealing with at the moment, and I'm trying to change my name. And to change my name is one of the most difficult experiences I've ever had in my whole entire life. And, you know, it's that inequality that exists because, you know what, not many men change their names, so they've just not thought about that process. And it goes for, you know, health research or all sorts of things where it's like actually just the bias is there, and it's not necessarily anyone's fault in particular, but we absolutely have work to do. And so I am very passionate, as you can hear in my voice, about holding a space for what I kind of consider like positive feminism. I talk about like, get t-shirts made, you know, feminists who love willies. Like, we don't have to like be feminists and hate men. We can actually be feminists and just be thinking about how we are better women and how we can stand for being the types of women that, you know, we want our daughters to be, that we want our granddaughters to be. And so that's that space, and I'm very passionate about that. And then I'm, you know, a mum. I've got, you know, 5 kids across 2 countries, and they're my absolute world. And so Steve and I kind of travel back and forth and make sure that we're raising them best we can while we're doing all this other cool stuff.
I know you've really made dreams become reality. And not only for you guys, but you do that for other people. When you created this trip to Antarctica that I went on, I was like, what is this? Like, who creates an event with some of the world's best DJs, health and wellness experts, where we can dance and do yoga and tea ceremony and explore the most exquisite place on earth? Like, that's what I was just thought, sign me up. So
Yeah.
you are a dream maker. And from the first moment I met you, which was actually on a brand design mastermind retreat in
Yes.
Fiji, not even 6 months ago, and look what has happened in our lives. Like,
I
that's the
love
thing.
it.
Your events are truly transformative. Like, I
Yeah.
was actually thinking about all the amazing things from just going on that retreat to then going to Antarctica, and how my life has completely expanded to a whole new level and helped me grow. But what really stood out to me from when I first met you in Fiji, and also what we're talking about today, is how you really include your kids and empower your daughters in what you do. You include them, you teach them about business, and yeah, tell me a little bit
Everything.
about how, because what came up for me is when I started well, it was probably my second business, and I had my daughter, and I was kind of hiding the fact that I had a child. I felt like, oh, I'm not being professional enough because if she's crying in the background, or I can't let them know. And it was so ridiculous because it was a kids' party business. So all of my clients were mums. But this was 14 years ago. So, yeah,
Yeah.
whereas you were saying 2 weeks after having your child, you
Yeah,
bring
no,
them to
yeah.
work.
I brought them to work. Yeah, I don't know what it was inside of me, but I just remember when I got pregnant, suddenly being aware that every single person at work that I knew who had children either didn't talk about them very much or just made it completely invisible. So they would come to work 9 to 5. They would make it very quiet if they were going to miss, a meeting or something for like something at school. Like it just was this really quiet culture, and I just couldn't understand it at all. So I got pregnant with Sienna. I was working at one of Australia's largest banks, and I just felt lit up to make sure that I was extremely visible as a mother and as a working mother. So, you know, yes, on maternity leave, I made a point of like not just going back for that one visit that every mum kind of does as a ticker box exercise to show off the baby. I turned up and like breastfed in the like front area because I was like, well, this is what, like, I'm a mum and I'm a working mum. And then when I returned to work, I would bring her in for meetings, and I would get funny looks, and I got lots of conversations with HR, and I just kept challenging it because I just thought it was ridiculous that I should have this invisible part of my life. And, for whatever reason, I just had this fire in my belly about it. And when I had Stella, I decided to have a reverse maternity leave, which was a term that I made up. So
Yeah, I was like, what's
I
this? I've never heard of
I
it.
went into like HR and I was like, oh, hey, so I want to have a reverse maternity leave, and here's how I propose it works. So I felt really confident as a mother, and I know not every mum feels that way. So I certainly don't, I'm not saying everyone should do this, but I felt really confident as a mother, and I also really, really love my work. And so I asked them if I could work just after having the baby and then work from home. And then around kind of 8 months, when I knew the baby would start to like want me a bit more and like be a bit active, I typically found like that 7 to like 12 months the hardest because they're eating and they're like wandering around. And I thought I couldn't think of anything worse than trying to return to work just as that's happening. So I said my proposal would be to take 4 months off then, and they agreed to it. And it was like a big test, right? So I took 2 weeks off, and then I was so ready to go back to it. I was just like gagging to get back online. And Stella became my business baby. So I took her into boardrooms and took her to meetings and flew up to Sydney for stuff. And she just became like this epic little business baby who people really loved having around. And I still did an amazing job, which meant that I proved to the company that it was possible. And I proved it to myself too, which was pretty epic. And I never had to leave my baby. I had her, I could breastfeed her on demand. Like, just felt like a dream for me to be able to create that sort of experience for me, but also for my family.
I just love how you have created your own rules and boundaries in life, like especially in that corporate world. And you said that you had some meetings with HR and some challenges. Like, what were some of these challenges, and how did you get through them?
Yeah, so like an example of a challenge was being asked to fly up to Sydney for a meeting, and the meeting time kept changing, and I had to keep like, expressing extra milk because I was going to be gone for longer or not as long. And so I'm there expressing all this milk, and this meeting kept changing, and it was a non-negotiable, like, mandatory meeting that I had to be in the office for. And then I had to change my flights because they kept moving it. So I finally get to the airport, they've changed it again. I'm at the airport, I've got to make my flight earlier. Like, it just was this total nightmare. And I finally got to Sydney, and I walk into the office and I'm already tired because of all this craziness. And they were like, oh, actually, we've moved it, to a couple of weeks' time. And I was just like, oh, you're actually kidding me. So I'm like, my boobs are swollen. I'm, exhausted. I've made this huge effort. And it had been this whole like, don't bring the baby sort of scenario because it's a mandatory in person, no children meeting. And it was just one of those moments where I was like, yeah, nah, I'm not going to do this. I'm definitely not going to move away from what I know works, which is bringing my baby with me, because then I've got her and I don't need to like stress or worry. I ended up with mastitis and all sorts of crap. And, these people who had invited me to this mandatory no child meeting didn't give a flying fuck about whether I was like impacted or what the kind of impact was on me or my family. And, you know, but it's not that they were trying to be mean. It's just that it's just not on people's radar. So the lesson for me was you absolutely have to advocate for yourself. You have to have your own boundaries. No is a full sentence, or that's not going to work for me. I'm really sorry. Like, it's just, I learned and found my voice, and, I already had a voice, but I learned that next layer of voice, which I think we kind of find our volume, which is part of the journey. But I certainly found it then, and I decided it was time for me to move from intrapreneur to entrepreneur, and actually pitched to the company that I was working for to change my employment agreement from a full-time permanent salary to a consultant. And they went for it, and I started my own business and got to create like all the flexibility in the world, which was really cool.
Bringing another dream to life.
Yeah, just like going for it. Yeah. What
And
happens if
then,
someone says yes to your dreams, right?
and so from doing this, like, what outcome have you seen with your girls, with Sienna and Stella,
Yeah.
say, and
I
business?
mean, it's epic. So Sienna was 5 when she launched her first business. Um, no litter glitter. She raised $2,500 on Kickstarter and like was, on the front of the papers, and it was all her own just passion project. And she'd seen enough of, she'd been to enough design thinking workshops to be able to follow a thread. So we're sitting watching the news one night and the war was on and there were refugees, and she was just like, oh, I want to do something to help those people, mum. And I was like, oh, well, how could we help them? And she was like, we could send them some glitter because glitter makes me happy. And I'm like, oh, but glitter's not good for the environment. And she's like, do you know what? We need to design some glitter that's good for the environment. And so, like, that sent us off on a little adventure together. And, I was really fortunate with a business that I already had, Sienna Baby, which is a shoe business, um, to know really amazing people in China. And they put us in touch with some factories and we got some samples made, and off she went. She designed her logo and got it done. And then during the pandemic, we wrote a book. So there was a lot of feelings during the pandemic, and I was studying a diploma in child psychology and a cognitive behavioural therapy and all these sorts of diplomas. And I'm like, how can I support my children? And unpacking and talking about their feelings seemed to be the biggest thing. So we started doing that. And then the girls and I, one night, just like jammed together and wrote a book. And we actually got an illustrator from Ukraine to do the illustrations. So that was a way of sending money and supporting people in that particular time, which was really cool for them because they were really heightened and aware of that at the time too. So yeah, we published My Feelings Are Not Who I Am, which is on Amazon, and it's really cool, really, really cool. And then little Stell, she was like, oh, I want to do a business, mum. I want to do something. So we started playing around, and last school FAPE, she tested a product and did like little bath salts with little toys hidden in them, like a Kinder Surprise for the bath,
Oh, I
which is
love
really
that.
cute. So
So
like they're very
cute.
entrepreneurial, and so are my step kids. So like there's nothing bad there at all. And the most lovely thing, in designing She Evolves and thinking about creating this community and this retreat and these experiences, I wanted to create a space that could allow women who felt, like me, where they wanted to be able to bring their children and they wanted to be able to mix that kind of business and pleasure and family in a different modern way. And so the first one, my kids were there. Stella stood on stage and she opened the first event, and it was just like unbelievable. She was 6 at the time and she'd rehearsed it for weeks. God love her. It was the
Oh,
cutest thing, like seriously the cutest. And then the big girls were walking around taking photos of everyone and putting them on the wall, and they just love being part of the whole experience. And the boys too, like they really, really enjoy being part of this whole community and this experience. And so that is a legacy for me, because it's not easy for women to just go, I'm just going to bring my kid everywhere and like start to be bold in the moves that I make as a career woman. It's like, well, takes a bit of energy. I think it takes a bit of support. I think it takes other being surrounded by like-minded women who are wanting something different and who kind of stand for change. So that's what's kind of cool in this space that we're creating.
Oh, 100%. Can you tell me a little bit more about the She Evolves community? And I know you've got a retreat in Bali and one in Byron Bay at the end of the year. Yeah, I'd love
Yeah,
to know more.
such a cool community. It's such an epic group of women because specifically I've looked around and look, I'm part of a lot of communities and I pay to be part of a lot of communities because I see the value of being a member or like being a part of these different groups, whether they're online or in person, that give you access to women that you just wouldn't meet otherwise, because that's the gold, right? That's where we met each other. You know,
Yeah.
I got you as a lifelong friend through going to retreat. I would not have met you if I hadn't posted it. So like that I'm just like so sold on the value of these sorts of experiences. And I years ago started a community called Nurture Her. We sold that for various reasons and then had a bit of a wait period. And one of the things that I love about Nurture Her is that it's for business women. So it's very simple, it's very focused. I kind of wanted to bring people like my mum and my besties along to these sorts of experiences. And over the years, I've had a lot of notes from people saying, I've got going to one of Sarah's experiences on my vision board. I've produced some pretty outlandish experiences, and so it was kind of cool to know that that's on people's vision board. But when you looked at the women, they were not just business women. They were either business or corporate, or stay-at-home mums, or women who've chosen not to have children, or older women who like know me through their daughters. And so I was like, oh, okay, how do I create something for all women and be super inclusive and create this beautiful space that's an intergenerational community so that we create an opportunity for women to come together. And to be really honest, like it's also for people who have lost their mum or don't have aunties or don't have sisters. So you get this woman tribe, you know. And yes, we gather and we talk about like business and technology and life and science and arts and awe and all the cool things, and we give lots of inspiration so that we can gear up and think about the future. But that doesn't just have to be for business people. And so I'm really like passionate about making sure that we get that diversity and that we get women of all stages and from all walks of life, because I believe that's where the magic happens. And so far, with 144 women who've come to our retreats over the last couple of years, 85% of them have made a new best friend, not just a new friend, like a new best friend. And I think it was like 94% of them have actually reported that they've experienced significant transformation or change in their life, whether that was, a new job or making a new retirement plan or taking up a new hobby or thinking about their life in a different way or starting a new relationship or ending an old relationship. Like there's been significant and measurable change through our community, and that's something I can guarantee. So,
Oh, definitely. A couple of things there. Like when you mentioned people without mums. I'm one of those. I've never had a
yeah,
mum, and I don't really have many older female women in my life. So to be in that group, and also being a single parent with a daughter as well. And she's asked to come on retreats and to workshops
yep.
in the last couple of years. And she's also had her own little business things too. And so I'm super excited to be able to bring her along and be a part of that community. I didn't start going to retreats and networking events till I was, my late 20s, and I've developed lifelong peers and friends from that. She's doing that at 13. Can you imagine the opportunities that's going to give her,
I
that
love
weren't,
that so much.
yeah, like she's really into food and cooking. And so there's probably someone that has a restaurant or a chef,
Yeah,
but she is working in an amazing restaurant here. But it just opens your world up. And when I was at the Fiji retreat,
yeah.
I'm now very closely connected to 3 other women from that retreat. And we actually meet every week for a Zoom. We've got an accountability thing and we keep in touch and we've got each other's back. And we're
Yeah.
very open and honest and vulnerable. And that is just so important to have people like that, because your partner or your best friend or someone, you know, that isn't in that world with you, you can't really share those things.
Mm.
So finding people that are really aligned and where you're at, and yeah, developing relationships that you otherwise might not meet them through your school or gym and that kind of thing.
True.
So it
Yeah,
really
and
is
there's only so
incredible.
much of that that can kind of like happen, right? You've got destiny, obviously, that's stirring the pot and making sure that you kind of meet people. But I do think you have to push yourself outside of your comfort zone to truly meet the people you're destined to meet. Like, I think some people are a little bit like, oh, I'll just sit back, I'll meet the people I'm meant to meet. Whereas I disagree with that. Every time I push myself outside of my comfort zone, I meet someone who I'm like, oh my God, you're my soul family. And I feel like I'm on this adventure to meet them all, and you're one of them, Prue. Like, I got you, and I was like, come to Antarctica with me, and off we went together. And it's like, I wouldn't have met you if I didn't kind of do that. And if I'm just sitting at home and I'm clicking in the same clicks and I'm doing the same things, you're not going to get those little bonus friends that you're meant to find out in the real world. You know, like little Easter eggs, go out and find them, like hunt them down.
Definitely. And what I'm hearing from people, you know, since COVID times, is that people are really wanting human connection. They don't want just Zoom meetings anymore.
Mm,
But there's also this thing going, oh, I don't really want to join the local tennis club or
yeah,
that. And also, I must admit, I go to yoga and Pilates, but there's not really a community around it. You go in, you go on your yoga mat, and then you go, and no one's coming together. And I think that's what these retreats and experiences do. It actually brings people together properly, like human touch.
yeah. We've got a bit of science that we kind of use to help accelerate that, right? And we know a couple of recipes that help, and you know, travel and adventure certainly helps. You know, how many people do we know that went on a Kentucky tour and stayed friends with the people, or you know, went off on some like adventure and met someone new? Like, you do meet friends when you're traveling, which is why I think I love taking people to new destinations and then creating that funness and connection and friendship within a new environment, because it's a shared experience. It's outside of your norm, and you've got
Exactly.
an opportunity to like just have a really lovely time while you're doing your networking and meeting new people. And I think the safety of, you know what, if you come along and have a fairly good time, but don't necessarily click with that many people, you're not stuck in some tennis club up the road where you're like feeling awkward that you have to keep going back. So like personally, I'm a 7 on the Enneagram. I am like the ultimate commitment phobe. If I am your friend, you know that I'm your friend, because I could quite easily just meet 1,000 people and be so happy to meet them. But like, I don't necessarily need to go and call them all every single day. You know, that's
Mm,
just not my kind of personality. So I do design experiences that work for me, in that I'm like, oh, yay, we get to meet all these people and like get to know each other and love each other. And there's no pressure. So it's not like it's
totally.
all
And I'm the
like,
same.
you know, like we're not all now having to like talk to everyone every single day. Like, it's just this, we take the intensity out of it. And it's like, it's just this free love, not free loving, but like there's an energy there that's just like, okay, I've got freedom to make choices around the people that I continue to engage with beyond this experience that makes sense for me and that I've resonated with, rather than you're all put in a class and you have to stay friends for the next 5 years. You know?
Yeah, it organically and naturally evolves as it goes. So I just want to ask you a couple questions to wrap up. You know, what advice would you have for a parent business owner to really balance running their business and having kids?
Yeah. So, and I've done lots of experimentation over the last 12 years, so I can definitely come at this with some stuff that's worked and stuff that hasn't. It doesn't work when you try and blend everything. So it doesn't work when you're just like, oh yeah, I'll just make it. That doesn't work. It ends up burning you out. It works when you get really clearly defined around what you can do, by who and by when. And when I say by who, like having a team of, whether it's a couple of virtual people that you kind of connect with, or you know, a cleaner that comes in once a month or once a week that kind of gives you a hand, like identifying all the jobs to be done in your life and then making sure that you're not trying to do them all, I think is like the number one. because you can get caught in a trap of trying to be all things to all people, and that's when the burnout happens. And do you know what? This is big advice to when I solo parented too, because the only way I got through solo parenting was going, what are all the jobs to be done and which ones can I actually handle versus which ones do I need a hand with. And I used to text my dad and be like, oh, I just did a blue job, you know, like took the bins out or like cooked food on a barbecue or whatever, like the blue jobs used to be. And I'd like celebrate those along the way. So I don't know, get the jobs to be done, get really clear, get some help. The next one is like radical compassion and forgiveness because, you know, when you're a business owner who's also a parent, like there will be balls that get dropped and that will happen on both sides. It'll happen when you accidentally miss a triathlon or a school meeting or something. And it will also happen if you accidentally miss a meeting or like forget to do something. But here's the reality. You would do those things if you were a full-time parent or a full-time worker. And so the fact that you're actually doing both is like everyone's going to drop balls. Like a stay-at-home mum occasionally drops a ball. A full-time worker occasionally drops a ball. So just like know that you're just a human. You're just a human who happens to have responsibilities. And I think bringing compassion around that helps just like normalize it. And then you kind of go, okay, I'm just a human. I don't, you know, necessarily have to be perfect all of the time. Things are going to happen. I think that's super important. And I think finally, like we have our non-negotiables, and that helps us make sure that even if we get to a point where, you know, we've had 4 kids who've had a vomit bug, you know, or like work's intense and all this stuff's happening, as long as those non-negotiables are happening, it's like everything's like the world's not going to come to an end. So, you know, that's making sure that we tuck the kids in bed of a night and make sure that we read them stories during the week and make sure that we're cooking meals as often as we can, you know, even if there's kind of chaos, even if it's like as crap as a spaghetti bolognese or whatever, like it's just a simple thing. And when you're kind of doing those little things, everything else just seems to sort of feel calm. So yeah, they're probably the things that I think I've got so much more. Like we've run so many wild experiments, and Steve and I, you know, have also run a lot of different experiments in terms of like who takes the responsibility for what role, and played with like me being the breadwinner versus him being the breadwinner, him being a full-time stay-at-home dad, me being a bit of a stay-at-home mum, then both sharing, and now we're both in like the full hybrid kind of mode again. And it's been fascinating to kind of go through those different role changes and really both have to level up during the experience.
Yeah, actually, would you mind sharing how you guys do things right now? Because you both live in different countries
Yeah, yeah,
and you both love each other's children as much as your own.
yes,
And the kids love each other and they were all together for a few
yeah.
years and now they're
So they were all
separate
together for
and
3 years. Yeah. So we've been now apart for 2 months. So at the beginning of the year, we set up our Melbourne apartment, and we've got shared custody on both sides of the ditch. And so we've got the most phenomenal Google Calendar you've ever seen. And I spend 7 days a month over in New Zealand. So I get time with his kids, and he spends 2 weeks across in Melbourne, and we figure out the final week, which is no kids. So we figure that one out. Um, it has been super challenging, but there are a couple of paradigms that we sort of leaned in and started to challenge last year, which was like, what is a family? How much time do you have to spend together for you to be okay as a family? What are the sorts of conversations that you need to be holding regularly to ensure everyone's emotional health is okay? Um, how how do we show up for each other when we're not there? So what are the acts of service or things that we can do to support one another from afar? Um, Again, what are our non-negotiables? So we got to that whole 7 days in New Zealand, 2 weeks in Melbourne kind of thing, because our non-negotiable was we want to be spending at least 3 weeks together as husband and wife while we're parenting, you know, in that kind of month. And then we've had work and travel and that sort of stuff. So like this particular week, we're both solo parenting in different countries. And we did things like did the shopping together and like thought about what meals we were going to cook together. So like even though you're in different countries, you're still helping each other make choices around like what to feed the kids and what to do on the weekend. And like we just today planned a really cool surprise for the kids in New Zealand because they're really missing us right now. So we've like created this cool opportunity for them. So yeah, it just takes a lot of communication and a lot of, I think, kind of, it's human-centered design for me. It's just like, who are all the people affected? How do we make sure that we're checking in on them and understanding like what their needs are, and then really designing experiences around how we sort of support each of them within their unique experiences, which we're doing. So it's pretty
It's
crazy.
incredible. That what you were mentioning before, like I'd love to write that down. You could almost create a course for parents to do
Yeah.
that. Parents that are even together, just like, what
Oh,
are the
I think
needs that need
so.
to be
Yeah.
met for kids? Because I
Yeah.
remember when Mila was a baby, you don't need to be like there the whole time. It's actually about
No.
making sure you're giving them solid play time and really filling that bucket for them, because then they feel
Yeah.
seen and heard. So then they then can go and play with themselves, that play their own games and entertain themselves. So
I love
instead of,
that seen and heard. I think that that's super important. The other day, I was really missing the Kiwi kids, and I wrote them all a love letter, and I FaceTimed them, and I read them the love letters. And like
oh,
every single one of them teared up and like was like, "I love you so much, thank you so much." And I was like, "Oh my God, that's such a simple thing that you just don't think to do for children." But we know that those little practices are the things that actually really hit home, and they absolutely love. They love when we do love letters, they love when we do challenges. So for Christmas, I designed a 12-month Wonder and Wonder family challenge. And so each month they open an envelope and it's got a voucher in there and it's got a challenge. And so they're all in sync around that particular challenge and the present that they get. So it did two things. It minimized the crap that happens at Christmas, which drives me absolutely nuts.
yeah.
And it also kept us connected as a family. Like their challenge this month is a creativity challenge. They've got $40 each to spend on craft supplies to think about designing something. And they've all already started talking about it and like trying to figure out what they do. So it gives us this like common thing to focus on each month, which has just been awesome. And it seems to be working, which is great.
And keeps them connected.
I
Oh
know.
my goodness. Can you please write a
So
book and create
cute.
a course about this? This is unbelievable knowledge and experience in the way that you are raising your kids. I'm very inspired by
Oh,
it. So
thank
thank
you.
you.
I'm so
And
lucky to be mama.
one other thing I wanted to ask you was, it's a bit much of a big question, but I'll just try it. Like, how do you teach your kids about business and money?
Oh no, this is a great question because it's something we think about a lot. I love it. So I'm a human-centered design expert. Um, I've been doing it and teaching it for the last 12 years. I wrote an MBA in design thinking for RMIT University. I've helped contribute to the postgrad in human potential for a digital economy with Academy EX. It's something that I'm very, very passionate about. So my approach to teaching them about business is both through the exposure of having them around and having them part of things. We ask them to help us make decisions. We give them like different scenarios and get them to kind of play with that. But I've taught all of our kids design thinking. So they all know how to go through a design thinking process because I think that's one of the most phenomenal tools that we can give our children is how to solve an epic problem. Like, how do you solve a wicked problem? Well, you use a framework for solving wicked problems. So that's number one. With money, this year we've set, it's pretty cool actually. So we use an app called Family Wall. And again, this is like an epic, epic tool for families, like whether this is a family who's together or living in different places. And we have set up a family budget. And the family budget, we've got like a kids budget, and we basically track what they have spent for the year. So they got given a certain budget for clothes, a certain budget for toys, and a certain budget for what we called like their connection flight. So they each got a flight to make sure that they can stay connected to the family so they can execute that at any point in the year. And you should have seen the relief on their little faces when they knew that they could do that. It's like the cutest thing you've ever
Oh,
seen. And the greatest thing about that is we have, with this budget and sitting them down and explaining how that all works, we've empowered them to have a different conversation. So now when we go shopping, they look at something and they'll be like, I really like this. I really want it. I think I need it. So we talked about wants and needs. But you've also got to have the budget for it. So that final part is a part that I think if every family started, so yeah, your needs and wants are great, but do you have the budget for it? So set your kids a budget, give them a budget, and give them an annual budget that they have to manage within. So our kids have got, and super fortunate, and also trying to keep them like clever and thrifty. So they get a certain amount each. Lola's already spent half of hers. Sienna's spent a quarter of hers. Stella's spent 30%. Luca's only spent 6% of his clothing budget, and Pax has only spent 10%. But we check in then on a regular basis and let them know, like, right, this is what you've spent of this much. This is what's left. So we're there on the weekend, and they'll be like, oh, that I really want that. I really like that. Actually, I've got the budget for that, so I can make a choice, my own choice, with this money that I've got access to get that. And I've just watched them over the last few months, and that empowerment around I actually know what I can and can't do within my budget is definitely empowering them to think differently about their money and about what they buy and who they buy it for. And I love that. I absolutely love that.
I think it's not just kids that need that. I need
Yeah,
that.
yeah,
And
it's huge.
that is totally a program that could be implemented into schools, because I feel like that's one of the biggest faults in the schooling system is we're not taught these basic things like tax and money and how to manage our money properly.
Absolutely. And, I've got
So
the fortune of, 12 years in banking and seeing all of the research and seeing all the programs being built. And I have sort of taken all of those lessons and applied what I think from a human centered design perspective would actually work with my family. And so it's been cool to actually run the experiment and watch it work. I'm like, oh my goodness, I feel so good knowing that I actually feel like I'm spoiling my kids more than ever, but they're all on budget. And so it's this lovely feeling of like we've set a family budget, we've all signed up for it, but we're all managing within it. So again, that's a really cool thing to be able to do across the two countries with all the kids, everyone kind of coming together. It's a good vibe.
incredible. Can you be my coach for being a good mum?
Oh, that's so sweet. You're an amazing mama. I loved
Oh,
all our chats about mothering together when we were in Antarctica because it's a role that like everyone just expects you to know how to naturally do. Like it's just built into your genes and your DNA. And I think that's partially true, but I also think we, of course, want the best for our children, but we don't always know what the best like is. And I had the most fascinating conversation with the kids yesterday. You're going to laugh so much. So we were out for coffee before school, and they were like, "Do you remember that time that Luca ran up the road and like you were really mad because you were like, please don't run up the road without telling me, and you gave him a behavioural consequence of like no device time for an hour." They were like, "That was too soft. Like that needed at least 3 days." And I was like, "Oh, okay. Tell me where else have I been too soft?" And they were like, "Oh, do you remember when like the kids chased the chickens down the driveway and you were like, you shouldn't chase the chickens down the driveway because what if they run on the road?" And you were like, "Come on, guys, you got to be able to listen." And they didn't listen, and they did it again. And then you said to them again, it was like no sewing for a day. It was like they love sewing, so thought I was being really harsh, and they were like,
oh,
"Again, mum, too soft." And I just think like we're all afraid of upsetting our children, and we never want to hurt them, but they want us to give them structure and routines and guidelines and boundaries. And the budget is one example of like that's what you've got to spend. That's all you've got to spend. And it's like the behaviors is the other one. So Steve and I introduced this whole behavioral consequence, and it's like you've got choices, you make choices, but if you make a poor choice, then there's a behavioral consequence. So that might be an hour without device time or a day without sewing or something like that. Apparently that's too soft. We need to kind of ramp it up. But we just noticed, especially with 5 kids under one roof, they responded exceptionally well to that really clear guidance around, well, there's a behavioural consequence. And they get to a point where they're like, oh, there's going to be a behavioural consequence for that choice, isn't it? And it's like, well, yeah, sorry. And they're like, fair enough.
I'm curious if you would ask them to create what the consequence would be.
Yeah, we did that recently, and we also asked them to last holidays set the guidelines. So we just said to them, "You let us know how you want to manage this holidays." They went downstairs, all 5 of them, sat down on the floor, created a whole chart, And it was all the things that they needed to do to unlock points. And then they created a points chart, and it was all gamified. It was like, you get 10 points, then you get this, then you get this, then you get this. And it laddered all the way up to like 80 points. And 80 points was $80 to spend on a new outfit. You know, like it was pretty detailed. And it was things like, you have to make your bed every day. You can't leave toothpaste on the sink. You can't pee on the toilet seat. You got to stuck the dishwasher. You got to cook a meal. Like, it was pretty detailed. They came up with this entire thing. And
Wow.
then they governed it. Like, it was extraordinary. We were just like, every single day, their bedroom was pristine, like military pristine. 5 kids in one kind of den area with bunk beds and stuff, and they kept it like neat as a pin. And they just all unlocked so many points. And we were like, you know, often parents think they need to do all the designing, but kids are capable of designing really great systems.
100%. And, you know, imagine this going into government and our country's
Yeah,
been run like this.
I know. It's like, maybe people are actually capable of making better choices for themselves, you know? I mean, and that's my firmest belief as a human-centered designer. Like, ask the people. What do the people
Exactly.
want? What do they need? You know, like, and of course you watch their behavior and actually have to do the observing as well. But like, yeah, of course you can start with what's going to actually work for you. It's an interesting way to kind of parent and lead.
100%. Well, you have just totally inspired and motivated me. I haven't got kids, but I've got 2 dogs now that have come in and gone, can you feed me? So I am going to wrap it up there, and I'm going to share info about the She Evolves community, Insider
Yes,
Expeditions.
amazing.
Is there anything else that you'd like to mention or talk about as well?
Oh, we've got actually a really amazing experience that's coming up with the solar eclipse in Mazatlan in Mexico. And there'll be a charter flight out of LAX, return flights, an amazing eclipse experience. I don't know if you listening have ever witnessed a solar eclipse, but it will be 4 minutes and 20 seconds of totality. And I am thinking about going, but regardless, the team have put together the most extraordinary experience, and it's well worth checking out. But yeah, Insider Expeditions, we've got some really extraordinary experiences. Our next retreat for She Evolves is in Byron Bay in August. It's the 22nd to the 24th. We've got an add-on day that people can add on if they feel like having an extra day, but it's going to be so much fun. And my girls will be there too, so it's going to be a lot of fun.
And I'll be there with Myla too. It was so lovely to chat with you, and I really hope that people will get something out of listening to this. And I'm sure they're going to want to know a lot more about how much of an incredible parent you are and what
Oh,
you do as well. And you're really just creating a beautiful next generation. And yeah, it's
so are
very good.
you. We're very lucky, aren't we?
We are. If you're yearning for an adventure that transcends the ordinary, picture yourself surrounded by the awe-inspiring beauty of places like Antarctica, sharing moments with incredible individuals. Insider Expeditions will take you there. I have a very special discount offer for you as a valued listener in the show notes for upcoming expeditions. So seize the opportunity to embark on an adventure that promises not just a trip, but an experience of a lifetime, just like this one. And I might even see you there. Remember, just like today's guest, the world needs your gifts. So shine your light, own your power, show up, and be seen and heard. If you're now feeling inspired and motivated and believe this episode can inspire someone in your community, please hit share on your favorite social media platform. It truly means so much to me. Each month, I also choose one podcast listener that writes a review to receive a special gift, a personal one-on-one align and energize strategy session designed to get you back on track to living your best life. To find out other ways you can work with me, head over to pruaja.com, where you can find links to my upcoming photo shoot tour dates, coaching, mentoring, and my upcoming retreat in Byron Bay. Or if you're looking for a motivational speaker for your next event, I would love to help you out. Thank you.